Hey there. Thanks for tuning in. You ready for another episode of my Bigfoot sighting? Alright then, let's do this.
Seen a bunch of rundown no-horse towns where the church is the backbone, love's in the plow, and the five-string melodies grooving, with the farmland rows where the roots run deep, beyond the noise of the busy streets, where the songs of the South are soothing. When I hear the front porch picking down, home rhythm ringing out, I don't run from banjo music. Yeah.
My Bigfoot sightings and experiences are why my wife and I formed Tri-State Squatchers in central Wisconsin. I guess I'll start before that, though. When I was in North Carolina, my dog and I and my sons used to go camping in Uwharrie National Forest. If you've watched TV shows like Finding Bigfoot, there was a man named John Green who had a very good infrared video of a Sasquatch, and that was the first episode my sons and I ever watched of Finding Bigfoot. And then when my older son and I went camping, we didn't realize we were in pretty much the same place where that video was taken. So we joked about it. We weren't really into Bigfoot at the time. We joked about it, and we'd be hiking around. Oh, that's a Bigfoot structure. That's a Bigfoot. And we were just laughing about it. So then things started happening after we kept going to the same place. Like one time where the sun had just gone down, we had the fire going, it was me and my two sons, and every tree frog in the world was chirping or whatever frogs do, and it was loud. It was really, really loud, and then all of a sudden it just went silent. And we heard a woo, woo, and I'm sitting there, probably an owl, and my son was like, "That was no owl, Dad." And so we were all on pins and needles, and sure enough, we heard the classic branch breaks, and a couple rocks got thrown in our camp, and we were excited and kind of freaked out, and it was fun. We did. We had a great time. We went back the next week and hoping that something like that would occur. And I don't know if they didn't appreciate my sons being there or what, but not a lot happened when I was with my sons after that. But being a teacher at the time, I had summers off. And I would go up there with my dog to the same area, and almost every time something would happen, it was crazy. One night, it was quiet. Like I said, not a lot of tree frogs, and it was a very quiet night, but nothing, no Bigfooty kind of stuff was really happening. And so my dog and I got in our tent and went to sleep. But then in the middle of the night, I hear somebody rummaging around in my cooler. Now, at the time, I thought raccoons or something. I was going to wake up to a big mess. And because I heard crash, kind of something rummaging through that, I'm thinking my lantern's going to be busted and there's going to be food all around. And I rolled over and went back to sleep, to be honest. But the next morning, there was no mess. And my lantern was placed back on top of the cooler. And I was like, that was crazy. I looked around for footprints and anything else I could find, but the ground was really hard, and I didn't see anything that time. But that was interesting. That was really cool. And the weird thing is my dog never moved. She didn't wake up. And that's what always happened with my dog. I think she thought they were people, and so she didn't even pay them any mind. But in the same place, this is where I had my first actual sighting. It was a really hot day in North Carolina. It was like 105 degrees in the shade, and we went off and found a reservoir so the dog could cool off, and we came back, and my phone was dead. So I had that plugged in my car, and I'm just sitting in the shade, looking over like, sort of a coulee that kind of went down and then up, and I'm just sitting in a chair, minding my own business, kind of looking out, and then I saw it just on the other side of the coulee, up about halfway by a big old pine tree. They could see the classic. It was like tall. I don't know, like 7-8 feet tall. Not really bulky, but black. The shape of the head didn't really, at this time, at the sighting, didn't look conical. It was like a big, very tall person. Not skinny by any means, but not really huge either. And it was kind of bobbing and weaving behind a tree, and then poke his head out and go do that again. And I'm watching and going, no way. It was saying to myself, and I'm staring. I mean, I looked for my phone in my pocket, and then I realized it was in the car charging, and I didn't want to go back to the car because I knew if I turned around, this Bigfoot was going to vanish. So I'm staring at it. Once again, my dog's just sitting by me, minding her own business. And it kept doing the bobbing, kind of peeking behind a tree and looking up at me. And I'm looking at it. And it was really bizarre because the air seemed to shimmer between me and the Bigfoot. I would kind of glance over at some other trees beside it, and there was no shimmer there. But I would look back at the Bigfoot, still doing the tree peeking, and it would be a little shimmer. I could see it. It wasn't like it was cloaked or invisible in some way out there, but the air kind of shimmered. And I just kept staring at it. And then one time when I'm still checking to see if the shimmer was real or not, and I looked away, I looked back, and sure enough, it was gone. And I was like, wow, that was a Bigfoot. So I, as soon as my phone was charged, I got it, and I went down, and I went to the tree where I had seen it, kind of bobbing and weaving. And that was at that point I realized just how tall this creature had been, because I could see where I had seen it, like the upper part of it, and I couldn't even, the branches close to that, I couldn't even reach. I'm not a really tall guy in the first place, but it was like, holy cats, that thing was huge. And I looked around for footprints, like you're supposed to, and I just didn't see any. It was like it was there, and then it wasn't. It was fascinating. I couldn't figure it out, of course, but it was just fascinating. And so I texted my sons, I saw Bigfoot, and they're all like, yeah, right, Dad. But I did. And that sighting is really what sparked my interest in Bigfoot. And it was really, really, I wasn't scared. I was just amazed. I went back and I had other experiences there, but I want to jump ahead in time because it wasn't long after that I moved to Wisconsin. And it wasn't long after that I met my wife, my new wife, and she told me about where she likes to take her dogs for a walk. And it was a new place. It had just built this bridge from the main park over a river, and the plan was to make a road path, a gravel road and stuff, and they have done that now. But just to provide access other side of the river. But nobody had really been over there for over 10 years. So it was brand new territory for anybody who goes over there. And she said, yeah, it's really kind of spooky, she told me. I go over there, I take the dogs, and I always feel like somebody's watching me. I was like, oh, really? That's fascinating. Let's go. Because that's one thing people, experience when the Bigfoot's around. They just feel like they're being watched. And you go over there, I'm walking with her, and I'm looking around, and I start seeing tree bends and structures and breaks, right near the trail. And we walked about 2 miles up the trail, and I keep seeing they're all over the place. So I started explaining to Karen, look, that's a tree break. I start on the way back. I'm pointing all these things. I had noticed them on the way out. I start pointing these out to her. There's a tree break. She's like, yeah. So there's a tree bend. See how the tree is like, this huge tree is like bent over. And it looks like a big bend. I don't know, a big arch. And she's like, yes. So I said, look at that. These trees are like leaning against each other. It looks like a structure. And she's like, and I'm like, Bigfoot. She just started laughing. And he's like, no, I'm serious. You feel like you've been watched. We have all these structures all over the place. Bigfoot. Have you at least been here? And she's just laughing. I said, no way. And I said, yeah, wait. Watch. And I didn't tell her this, but I really had no idea to answer this next statement. I said, watch. When we get out on the other side of the river, we won't see any of that kind of thing. And she's like, yeah, right. They're all over the place. We're going to see them on the other side of the river, too. Guess what? He didn't. So I just, on the drive home, and we got to get out there. And then she's like, oh, yeah. But then she starts picking up on my enthusiasm. She's like, let's go tonight. I'm like, really? Yeah. We'll go out there. We'll see what we can find. I'm like, okay, go. So she brings a blanket. She brings her drink. And she's just ready to just like camp out in what we call the meadow, which is the first turn on the path. And she sits down. And I'm like nervous because I'm pretty confident we got Bigfoot or Sasquatch, like we like to call them, in the area. And I don't know these guys. The family in North Carolina was pretty friendly. I mean, they never messed with me, but you never hurt anything. So I wasn't really scared there, but I didn't know if there's like one or a family or what in this new area. So I was nervous, and she was like, what's the matter, Chris? I'm like, I'm serious. There could really be Sasquatch here. And she's like, yeah. So I'm like, I said, they're like 8 feet tall and 1,000 pounds and stuff. And it's like, she started laughing again. Well, we're not, we're fine. Sit down. I'm like, no, let's go for a hike. So we picked up her blanket, and I carried the blanket, and she carried her drink, and we started going up the path. And to be honest, nothing really happened going up the same path we were on earlier in the day, and nothing really happened until we got to one spot, and her phone in her back pocket, she got a text message, and it went beep, 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 and about 5 seconds later, in the woods, I hear beep, 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 I'm like, what was that? And she says, that's my phone. Your phone's out in the woods, Karen. Oh, yeah. And then we heard a whoop. I was already nervous, so now these sounds were too close for my comfort. Karen laughed and kept going until she heard a growl. And she thought it was a bear, and she said, let's go. And I was like, okay. And we started heading back. This is where it gets really, really interesting, scary. What do you call it? I mean, it was freaky. It was scary, to tell you the truth. So we're going down this path. If you know about the woods in Wisconsin, it's deciduous forests. You got pine trees and oak trees and elm trees and all kinds of stuff on either side of us. And it's the middle of summer, so the berry bushes are really, really tall, and you just can't get through them. And we're just walking down. We get to the meadow that I mentioned earlier, and it's on the way back. It's the last turn to the straight stretch to the bridge, which is about half a mile down. And we hear this great big stomp. It was like boom. And Karen says, Chris, want to go check that out? I let out an expletive, and basically I said, well, no. It did not sound like a come hither kind of sound, if you know what I mean. It was just boom, like something huge stomped as hard as it could. It was loud. And we kind of picked up the pace a little bit and headed towards the bridge, thinking, okay, that was really cool. And we actually heard stomp. That was awesome. And we get to the bridge, though, and we get like 2 steps onto the arching bridge over the river, and we hear this classic howl. It was really, really loud. And we're like, first going, that's not a train. She's like, nope, that was not a train, Chris. And I'm like, that's crazy. And it only got worse. All of a sudden in the woods, just if we're looking back towards the trail to our left, we start hearing howls. I mean, when I say howls, it was like 3 or 4, 5 different creatures making noise. So we thought, that better part of wisdom would be to get the heck out of Dodge. So we hightailed it over the bridge, and we get halfway there, and all of a sudden they just start screaming. It was like howls and screams, and one of them sounded like the woman getting massacred just inside the trees. We're walking just opposite of all this caterwauling from this small river that these creatures, assuming they're Bigfoot, which I'm pretty sure they were, could just wade across. And they're just like, rah, rah, banging on stuff, and it's literally screaming like a woman getting massacred and raped or whatever. And other ones were just howling, and some sounded, you've ever heard like chimpanzees in a zoo or something, but it was like numerous of them. And it was the scariest thing I've ever heard before or since. We were like, oh my God. And at the time, we weren't really squatchers at the time. We were just going out to see what would happen. So we didn't have big flashlights. We didn't have a camera. We didn't have any audio. And we were too frightened to think we could have just turned the audio on our cameras, or not our cameras, but our phones. But that's what people say, why did you do that? I told them, when stuff like that happens, we were terrified. We didn't know what was going to happen next. So we hightailed it out of there and swore we weren't going to go back there. So 2 weeks later, we were back. We had bigger flashlights this time. We still were not Tri-State Squatchers. But we had to go see. We just had to go just see if we were crazy or just hearing stuff. We both heard it, so there's no way we were crazy and didn't hear stuff, but it was like there was a sense of wonder for us. All right? So we got out, we took the biggest flashlights we had, which in retrospect weren't very good, but we get over the bridge. We took a deep breath, and we started walking up the trail to, like I keep saying, the meadow, because that's the first turn. And we get to a little high point on the trail. And right, we got woods on either side, except the meadow is a little bit clearer with just a couple trees in the middle of it, right? And some really long grass, about 3 or 4 feet high. And so we're heading towards it, right? In the middle of the night, totally dark. And I'm kind of looking to the sides because that's where I heard the noises before. And I'm kind of shining my little flashlight, seeing if I can see anything, not seeing anything, not hearing anything. And then Karen's a couple steps ahead of me. She says, "Oh, I shine." And she's shining her light right by the trees in the middle of the meadow. And then I shine mine. And sure enough, there was some eye shine, but it was like, 2, maybe 3 feet off the ground. And some kind of critter, I said. And we took a few more steps. And all of a sudden, the eye shine goes from being like 2 feet off the ground to 7 feet off the ground at least. It was nuts. It went from, seriously, it went from 2 to 7. That's the eyes, not the top of the head, right? And like I said, we didn't have the big flashlights like we have now. We're shining the best we could, but the best light at this time was the moon, and so this creature was backlit by the moon. We could just see his silhouette. He was massive. It had to be at least 8.5 feet tall. We could just see the silhouette and the eyes. And then when it turned to go around the trees that it was behind, we saw, its silhouette, right? It was massive. It was walking, and it was stomping at the same time at us. Kaboom, kaboosh, kaboom. And we were like, oh my, no. And we were kind of frozen for a couple seconds. And I'm like, are you seeing this? And Karen's like, are you seeing this? I'm like, yeah, I'm seeing this. And we took off towards the bridge and safety. We always, still to this day, the bridge is our safety. It really wouldn't be safe. It's like, if you think about it, if you're a little kid and you hear a noise in your room in the middle of the night, you pull your sheets over your head because then you're safe. If there really is anything in your room, you're not safe, but you feel safe, and you are, and you wake up the next morning. So the bridge is kind of like that for us. That's our safe zone, right? So we get there, almost, and Karen's a little behind me, and she says, "It's here. It's right here. Run!" And I started running towards the bridge, thinking she's right behind me. And then until I hear her call my name, I hear, "Chris." I turned around, noticed she wasn't with me, and it was all dark behind me. And it was the best I could do to get my light on her, and she's just frozen stiff. She could not move. Her light was not shining. It was all dark. I couldn't see anything except I found the neck of her jacket, and I had to yank her to get her to move. And we hightailed it out of there. And what had happened, she told me once we got to the car that she had heard the noise at the edge of the woods, and she had turned around, and this old looking gray Sasquatch stepped right out of the woods right in front of her. We're talking 10 feet. And she described it as maybe being surprised that she had turned around and actually saw it, because it froze, and she froze, and she put her light on him, and she was going up it, with the light, and her light just went out. And she could not move. She didn't even remember calling my name. But it was she said it was about 7 feet tall, but it was kind of crouched over. Not all the way over, but it was like a runner about, if you've ever seen a runner about ready to take off. It was kind of in that position. It was all gray, kind of a conical head, human-like features, right? And it didn't have, and it wasn't furry, it was hairy, she said. And the hair would just hang down about a foot off of its arms, for instance. And no hair on the face. And kind of like she said, it was all gray, like an old Sasquatch. Which, in my opinion, I should have known better than to step up in front of her. But, and mind you, I had to poke her for about a year to get all this information out of her, because she didn't even like to talk about it. I did an interview with her on our Tri-State Squatchers, and that took a year before I could convince her to talk about it. It wasn't the massive one that we had seen. It was older and a little shorter, kind of hunched over, all gray, and it was right there, 10 feet from her. We went back the next day so she could show me where she had seen it. And I'm like, that's like 10 feet there. She says, I know. And it just freaked her out. And so we named that one the Old Gray Sasquatch. And we're always now on the lookout for him, because he's the one we got really close to. But like I said, that was not the massive one that we thought was chasing us in the beginning, which means there were at least two over there. And that's something we've found out going back to this place and other places, that you never, ever experience just one Sasquatch. If there's only one in the beginning, there's going to be another one really soon. And that's how interesting our Sasquatch zone is that for us, even if nothing happens, no tree snaps or rocks or anything, we're always, almost always anyway, ushered out of the woods or followed. On both sides of the trail, you can hear movement that stops when we stop. Bipedal movement. It's really amazing. And another account, this is in the same place. We had an experience where, I don't know if it was the next time or it wasn't very long after. Nothing, we'd gone out our 2 miles, gone into the trail, walked back, nothing had really happened. We had bigger flashlights by now, and if we got them both going, we could light up the woods. They're really nice lights. And, nothing. really happened. And then we're on the path from the meadow to the bridge, and I look over and I see eye shine. Just eye shine. And that's significant. And I'll get to that later about why just seeing eye shine is significant. But I'm seeing eye shine, and then next thing I know, Karen's right trying to move my flashlight, and I don't know why. And I'm like, don't. I'm keeping an eye on this thing, because she didn't say it at the time, but she was looking at eye shine a couple of yards away from the eye shine I was looking at, and I didn't even see them at the time. And then it starts moving closer, not hearing anything. I just seen this eye shine moving closer, kind of, you could see it kind of moving around trees and stepping over stuff. It was bobbing up and down, these two white eyes was coming for us. And I told Karen to get out of there, and I was actually a little braver than I normally am, and I backed out. I mean, it's a significant trail, so I could walk backwards on it, and I'm shining a light on these eyes that are coming, keep coming, they're keeping pace with me, man. And I'm just like, I'm gonna die. And it's just black. All I could see was these eyes following me through the woods. Really kind of scary. So I got there, got to the bridge, our safety zone, and the eyes stopped at the edge of the woods. It just sat. I mean, they were like, once again, the eyes themselves were at least 7 feet up. So the creature had to be even taller than that. But that's all I could see was the eyes. And that was really freaky. So once again, we got out of the woods safely. And why I bring up the eyes, just seeing the eyes, and why that's significant for us is we hear stuff in the woods and we see eye shine, we put our lights on it. If it's deer, we light up the entire forest. Almost. I mean, it seems like it. Not the entire forest, but, you see all the trees and the deer walking around. You can tell the gray of the deers, or depending on the season. And we see it. We see the creatures walking around and moving their heads up and down, and usually they walk away from us. We see their white tails bobbing around, which is fun. But if it's a Sasquatch, all we see is the eyes. We don't see trees. We don't see bushes. We don't see the ground. We don't see critters. All we see is blackness and the eyes staring back at us, which is really, I have no explanation for it. And these eyes, I mean, they're not deer eyes. They're like about high, like 7 feet usually. And they'll just sit there and they'll stare at us. And one time this happened, and this is why I know that these are Sasquatch when this happens, when you just see the blackness in the eyes, is Karen and I, we're out, we're filming, when we brought her son and his fiance with us so they could explore. Her son had been out with us to this area and a couple other ones, and he's a true believer. Now, he's a true believer after going on with us, but his fiance not so much. And then they were messing around, and then we see the eyes. Well, I couldn't see them because I'm too short, so I went off. I told Karen we probably don't want to hang out here too long. But the eyes, she's like, the eyes. So I kind of went down the trail a little bit, trying to get a better perspective over the weeds and undergrowth. I'm like, 20 yards away. I could see Karen and the rest of them, and Karen shining her light, and I can even hear them talking, and her son's fiance, it's not a Bigfoot, it's a deer, stuff like that. And all of a sudden you just hear crack. And it sounded like a really big rock hitting a tree right by them. This is what I thought it was. Turns out, this Sasquatch had thrown a rock at Karen's flashlight and hit it. Hit her hand, too. She had bruises for like 3 weeks after that on her hand with a rock because she was holding the flashlight. So when it hit the flashlight, it hit her hand, too. And it was nuts. So you had the darkness surrounding the eyes. The eyes are pretty high up, about 7 feet. And then a rock, line drive, hits the flashlight that's shining in his eyes. I mean, bears can't do that. Nobody can do that. I mean, no, there's no creature in the woods that can take a fist-sized rock and throw it through the woods in the dark and hit exactly what it's aiming for, which was, in this case, Karen's flashlight. There was no person. Way too tall to be a person. We were the only people out in the woods except for the Sasquatch, apparently. And that kind of knocked us for a loop because we'd had rocks land near us. We had sticks go over us. We'd never actually been hit before. So we've been a little more cautious ever since that. That was crazy. But it had to have been a Sasquatch for the reasons I said. Bears aren't going to throw anything. Squirrels may throw a pine cone in your direction, but it's not going to hurt you. I mean, it was a Sasquatch. And once again, all we saw was the eyes. In darkness. We couldn't see the trees, except for ones right next to us. We couldn't see the creature, but we could see its eyes. And I don't have an explanation for that. Except, I do have a hypothesis. And I may get criticized for this, and I might step on some toes. But there's a lot of talk about infrasound in the Sasquatch community. And I don't believe in that. I mean, I believe there's such a thing as infrasound. I just don't believe Sasquatch use that. I don't think that's what it is at all. I think what they have the ability to do is alter your perception of your environment. I don't know if call it a psychic ability. I don't know what it is, but I think they have the ability to alter your perception. And why I say that is, first of all, like I said, you have the whole thing with the eye shine and you can't see it. And then also, there's the occurrence of what we call being squatched, which I don't think it has anything to do with infrasound. It has everything to do with just their ability to confuse you. Because there's another episode down the trail. There's another trail off. It goes towards a river, into the river bottoms. It's pretty spooky down there, to tell you the truth, especially at night. And it's just a 5-minute walk from the main trail, following the trail down to these river bottoms, right? And you got these mostly cottonwood trees down there because they handle the water better. It floods and it resides, but there's like we had been there during the day and we'd seen what looked like structures and bends and stuff. So of course, we went there at night, and we were exploring. We were shooting videos and kind of chatting amongst ourselves, and not hearing anything though. But we're getting some good shots of structures and what looked like beds, which are just like flat areas with nothing around, and you get some grasses bedded down on them. and some, 3-point structures, we call leaners. And it's like, usually not huge trees put together, but sometimes they lean against the big trees. And a lot of that kind of stuff was down there, and we're all excited though. We're both shooting video, so we're a little bit separated, and I can hear Karen talking into her phone. I'm shooting with the video camera. It was really pretty cool. I mean, it was nice. Nothing was getting thrown at us. We weren't hearing anything. We were just shooting video. And then we hear a whoop over towards the river. Whoop. And then we hear, and we both froze. I mean, that's what it sounded like. It was like chatter. And we're like, whoa. Uh-oh. And it would have been so bad, except it was coming from the direction the trail that we needed to go out was. If that makes sense. We were going looking around at all the structures, and the trail that we came in on was in the same direction as we were hearing these voices. Not human voices, but the chatter. Some people call it samurai chatter, but it's more like, and we're like, oh crap. We need to go, because if they keep coming, we're going to be able to get out of here. And so then I headed towards the trail, got on it, heard the voices again, off to our side, which I sighed some relief, because I didn't want to get trapped by a couple of Sasquatch and they could break me like a twig. So we kind of hightailed it out of there that night. But we went back to the same place because that was pretty cool. And we decided this time we're going to do a live feed. And it's going to be so cool. We planned it out, got our equipment ready, and as a matter of fact, I went earlier. Went down this trail and set up my audio recorder and turn it on about an hour before sunset, thinking then we'll come out there and we'll have an hour of audio, and if they're around, we'll hear them. Brilliant, right? So about an hour later, it's, we get out there. By the time we get to the trail that leads to the river bottom, it's dark. But we knew exactly where the trail was. It's not a hard trail. It's not a very long trail. But it's not used a lot, but it's an obvious trail, right? And it's simple. You just kind of take a right and you head towards the river, and you get there. So we get there. Same place as I just mentioned, with the structures all around, right? And first thing we got there, I found my recorder. It wasn't working. To this day, it doesn't work. And I was like, I was pretty bummed about that. I was like, what the heck? Well, let's look around. We'll shoot some video and we'll talk. And like I said, we're live on our Tri-State Squatchers YouTube channel. And I start hearing noises. We're like sort of typical noises, and nothing like my audio wasn't working, so we shot some video. We're heading out, and we hear a stomp. Huge stomp. So we picked up the pace a little bit. Next thing we knew, we were totally lost in the woods. And I imagine this is a really easy trail that we've been on a number of times, and I had been on actually more than Karen had, because I used to go out in the winter, so I knew all the trails all around. And this is a simple little 5-minute little trek on this little trail back to the main trail. And we were totally lost. I had no idea where the river was. I had no idea what direction we were walking. These things kind of seem familiar, but not really. And even for me, who has walked in these same woods by myself, but in the middle of daytime, so things should have looked familiar. They didn't look familiar at all. We were lost and confused and turned around. But anytime we stopped, though, we hear a big stop to keep us moving. So we go in whatever the direction the stop was coming from, we went in the opposite direction. Seemed wise. And we keep walking down. Then I hear the trains. I hear a train. Oh, we need to go towards the train. Towards the train tracks, because that is the same direction as the main trail is. Brilliant plan. So we start going, trying to get to the train tracks, away in the direction of the train tracks. And the stomps just got louder and closer and more often. We didn't dare stop. We think we're going in the right direction. And then the berries, the raspberry and blackberry bushes are like 6 feet tall and just thick. And we did not have a machete. What we needed was a flamethrower, but we didn't even have a machete. And we're trying to barrel through this, and I'm leading the way, and I'm getting all cut up, trying to make a path with Karen. And anytime I stopped, Karen would say, "This is right behind us." Then we thump, boom. And then try to get fun. It was just a struggle, and it was in darkness everywhere. And this is like 2:00 in the morning, and we're being like followed by a massive Sasquatch, and we had no idea where we were. It was like a jungle. Finally, I had an idea. I turned my backpack to my front and used it as a plow and a shield, and I just barreled through. I'm thinking, the trail's right up here. I gotta get through. And I just went as hard as I could just to burst through the berry bushes. And there it was the path. And I got there, and there was no more noises. And we were just like, what the heck just happened? And I'm like, we got squashed. I mean, we found the path. We were nowhere near where I thought we would be when we got to the path. We were like a 1/4 mile down the path. So we got totally squashed. That was a scary time. So, and we're filming the whole time, and people are commenting, "Oh, be careful," which was pretty interesting. But before I did the last push, I had logged off, saying, "I gotta just get us out of here." And so then we got to the path. It's just like the bridge, the path was safe. I don't know why, but it is. At least that's the way we feel. And so I started filming again and telling everybody we were safe, and everybody's like, "Well, we were so worried, and that was really scary." And I'm just like, we were both out of breath, and we decided, of course, to go home. And we got followed, and we heard some howls, and they wanted us gone for some reason. We heard, grunts and growls and howls, and the walking on either side of us on the way down, and I was getting a little perturbed. I actually howled back at him, and I did some growling. The fear had kind of left me. I was a little ticked off, actually, at this point. Nothing came out of the woods, luckily. And that was just really, really scary. And a few days later, one of our viewers sends us this screenshot from the video of that night. And what was on there was unbelievable and totally unexpected. Because it wasn't a Sasquatch that was on the video. I kid you not. Now, I have no explanation once again, but there it was. I swear it looks like a little gray alien. No kidding. And it was down in the river bottom where we were filming at the beginning. And all I could think of was, were the Sasquatch protecting us? That's a distinct possibility. They wanted us out of there, and they wanted us not to go, for some reason. It wasn't enough for us to scoot out on the trail, but we had to go, like I said, a quarter mile, half mile beyond that, and around and through the trees and the briars and all that to keep us safe. And then we weren't given any time to be complacent on the trail on the way back. They trailed us. They made noises to let us know they were there, and we needed to keep going. So when I got this screenshot from our friend, it was like, wow, that is the craziest thing ever. I went back to look around, try to find out where the screenshot was shot and stuff. I think I found it. And oddly, there were these orange marker ribbons on some of the trees, and they made a path out of the woods and into the marshy area with a bunch of flattened down, marsh grasses, which wouldn't be significant except that these orange little flag ribbons that somebody had put, that they weren't there before, that somebody had put out there. So that's another mystery. I mean, who was out there in the meantime without us? It's crazy stuff. So I'm not saying Bigfoot are aliens. I don't know what they are. Sasquatch or Sasquatch is what I tell people. But all this is to say, they have some remarkable abilities that are evidenced by our experiences, our sightings, and just general experiences, and being chased, and not being able to see them. And they're remarkable, remarkable creatures. But what I tell people, they'll say, well, if I saw that, I'd never go into the woods. You hear that all. I haven't been in the woods ever since. And I'm going to go ahead, go back out in the woods, people. Just think about it. You got these 8 to 9 to 10 foot massive creatures that I assure you are there. But they're not out to kill people or even hurt them, I don't think. And we've given them ample opportunities to do whatever. We've had line drive rocks hit trees right by my head. And if anyone had wanted to hit me, even with a rock, they would have. They are that skilled. They are the masters of their environment. Native Americans talk about them learning a lot of their woodcraft from Sasquatch, or as some of them refer to them as Sabe. And if you've ever read the, what's it called? The Last of the Mohicans, and the skills that are displayed in that book by the Native Americans, just being quiet and stealthy and basically invisible and leaving no trace in the woods. And they learned that supposedly from Sabe. Sasquatch are the masters. So I know some of the stories I've told tonight have been kind of scary, kind of amazing, maybe unbelievable, but they're all true, however. But I am not afraid to go into the woods, neither is my wife, because they've been there the whole time. If there's a Sasquatch where you're camping, it was there before you. And if you've been there like a dozen times before, you were even thinking about Sasquatch and nothing ever happened, probably nothing's going to happen still. So don't be afraid of the woods. If they wanted to do something to harm you or your loved ones or whatever, they would have already. They're more than capable. So continue going out of the woods. But be aware. Be aware. Listen for the double tap wood knocks. That signifies that there's more out there and they're communicating and letting each other know where they are. Listen for the single wood knock that I believe means you've been spotted. Right? Listen for the breaks in the trees. There's the snaps. Sometimes that's just them letting you know they're there. And listen carefully. Look carefully for the signs. The trees lean against other trees. They bend. The fully, perfectly fine trees just bend in an arch. It'll just make your trek through the woods that more interesting, knowing that you're not alone. And that's my feeling. You're not alone in the woods. In fact, I would say the Sasquatch are fairly ubiquitous woodland creature, at least in Wisconsin. So, enjoy. Enjoy the woods.
Well, that's it for tonight's show. If you've had a Bigfoot sighting and would like to be a guest, please go to mybigfootsighting.com and let us know. Thanks for listening. Have a great night.
Seen a bunch of rundown no-horse towns where the church is the backbone, loves in the plow, and the five-string melodies grooving, with the farmland rows where the roots run deep, beyond the noise of the busy streets, where the songs of the South are soothing. When I hear the front porch picking down, home rhythm ringing out, I don't run from banjo music. Yeah.